Aloha, welcome to the Mr.G podcast. It is Friday, January 19th, 8:50 a.m. I'm coming to you from Honolulu, Hawaii, on the outskirts of Chinatown. And today we're going to talk about nepotism. Today's podcast, the idea came to me during yesterday's podcast. I was talking about NBA basketball, and I was talking about the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James. And LeBron James, if you follow basketball, has a son who plays for USC. His name is Bronny James. And yesterday, as I was closing, I made a joke. I said, I hope the Lakers lose tonight, and I hope Bronny James, and I was about to say, I hope Bronny James, has a bad game. But instead, I said, I hope Bronny James fails his algebra test on yesterday's podcast because I stopped myself. I couldn't bring myself to be a hater for LeBron James. I've experienced haters my whole life. People hating me for being tall, people hating me for being smart, people hating me for having a deep voice. In the past couple years, I've had neighbors who I've never spoken to or initiated a conversation, hating me for making online content of me feeding street cats. So it's never good to be a hater in any aspect of life. And one thing I hold my hat on is whenever previously in life I've met somebody that's taller than me or smarter than me or better looking than me, I don't start hating on their positive attributes. Instead, I say, hey, that person's good looking, good for them. Hey, that person's tall. I'm tall, but that person's even taller. And so I had to stop myself. I'm like, what am I about to say? That I hope Bronny James has a bad game. I have nothing against Bronny James. But the thing is, it goes a lot deeper with LeBron James. LeBron James changed the NBA more than any other player previously. And he did some good things. He made it so there are super teams. So, all stars go to one team and win a championship. But he also did some negative things like put more power in the players' hands. So they're making an exorbitant amount of money. Even the players on the 12th man on the bench that never sees the floor is making 20 million a year or something crazy like that. And more so, a lot of people dislike LeBron James. He's been very polarizing for a lot of things that he said in social media, defending China and speaking against Los Angeles Police Department as well. So LAPD is not a fan of LeBron James or his tweets, and like I said, he's a very polarizing athlete. And I had nothing against him. I've watched LeBron James since he played in high school, and I remember when he entered the league, I was cheering for him. He was doing very well. His first few years in 2007, I played the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA Finals, and I wasn't really cheering against him. And he is a very boisterous player. He argues with the refs a lot. He, hits his chest a lot. And being from San Antonio, I've always been a fan of the San Antonio Spurs with like David Robinson, Sean Elliott, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, really, high class individuals that aren't like banging their chests all the time. So I wasn't a huge LeBron fan. And then they had the decision where he went to the Miami Heat and he just became the villain for everybody. And everybody was cheering against him, except in 2017, because Golden State had won so many championships and the Cavs were down 3-0 in that series. And they came back to win the NBA Finals. And I remember like growing up in San Antonio with my twin brother, we would always cheer against LeBron James. But then in 2017, I spoke to him like, "Hey, what do you think of the NBA Finals?" He's in the mainland. I haven't, seen him once in 10 years, but he's like, "Oh, I'm like, who are you going for, Golden State or Cleveland?" He's like, "I'm going for Cleveland and LeBron. Heck yeah, F Golden State." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I kind of see that." Because I wanted to see somebody come back from a 3-0 deficit since it's never been done in the NBA Finals. And so it was either 3-0 or 3-1, right? So I was at church that week, and it was about to be Game 7 that night, and somebody asked me, they're like, "Oh, how do they know I like basketball?" They're like, "Hey, Gregory, what do you think of the game 7? Who are you cheering for, Golden State or Cleveland?" I was like, "He's like, you're cheering for Golden State, right?" I was like, "No way, go Cavs and LeBron." And then he's like, "Really? I'm surprised," because I was talking bad about LeBron James previously when we were having a conversation about basketball. But I said the same thing that my brother said. I said, "Yeah, I'm going for LeBron James, and I think everybody was kind of going for him at that point. But so he is very polarizing. I haven't cheered for him a lot, so that's addicting, though. And when you're used to not cheering for someone. So, but then I thought, am I going to not cheer for his son, Bronny James? I have nothing against Bronny James. I heard him speak for the first time yesterday. I just saw a video that somebody asked him. He was like in the locker rooms. A reporter asked him, "Who's your favorite basketball player of all time?" And then he like thought about it for a second and acted like he was thinking about it. And somebody's like yelling Kobe in the background or something. And then he's like, "Oh, I'd have to say LeBron James." And he is a very likable person, Bronny James. He's LeBron James' first son. And, so many videos I saw that were cheering against him, saying that he's overrated. And this kid, freshman at USC, has so much pressure on him, more pressure than any freshman collegiate basketball player that you can think of because of who his dad is and the pressure that his dad put on him as well. So it's like you understand his first start. He was 0 for 6. He scored 0 points. He had like 2 rebounds and an assist. But every time he catches the ball, they're screaming overrated. But he seems to be handling it pretty well, and he might hopefully get drafted by the NBA. And I realized yesterday I have no reason to cheer against Bronny James. Let him live his life and be the first father-son duo in the NBA. And that'd be really interesting. I hope he performs well in this year's college basketball season, and I hope he gets drafted. And I caught myself yesterday when I was about to cheer against him for some reason, and I realized I don't need to do that, you know. But there is the thing about nepotism. Would Bronny James be in the position that he is if it wasn't for his father? I think we all know the answer to that, and that's probably, he probably wouldn't be. He's a 6'2" undersized 3 and D, uh, good 3-point shooter and good defender, but he's not a point guard or he's not a playmaker. He has a good 3-point shot. So it is a lot about who his father is, and that has to do with nepotism. And the way I personally grew up, my father, Dr. Joseph Brandt, was a successful businessman. He probably has millions. He does have millions of dollars or houses that are worth millions of dollars. And I've never gotten a penny from him. I'm completely self-made. If you can, some people say there's no such thing as self-made, and everybody had some help at this point or that. But I graduated from the second-ranked journalism school while I was homeless. I didn't get a single penny from a father, a mother, or a rich uncle or anybody. And I've had a very hard life and have been working since I was 14 years old. The first time that I had money in my life for food was when I was 14, working myself and earning it myself. But it's true, everybody has help in life. My current cat feeding operation, it would not nearly be as successful. I wouldn't be able to feed as many cats if it wasn't for the donations I've received on my Amazon wish list and the cash donations on GoFundMe and Venmo and Cash App and everything else and PayPal. And if it wasn't for that help from strangers that I've never met in person, then it wouldn't be as successful as people liking my videos, liking my cat feeding videos. So, you know, you can say I'm self-made where I don't have a family that has ever helped me and then least bit. You could say my twin brother, gave me a few rides here and there, but he was a lot more trouble than help, you could say. But so I've always been against nepotism and been like, oh, I'm a self-made man. I don't, nepotism is bad. And you see nepotism, some of the most famous examples is the president of the United States, George H.W. Bush, and then his son becomes president, George W. Bush, or John Adams, elected his son, John Quincy Adams. And so, becomes president. And it's throughout Hollywood. Lenny Kravitz, Zoe Kravitz, Jake Gyllenhaal, Maggie Gyllenhaal. You always have these siblings, playing favorites. Here in Hawaii, it's even more prevalent where so many people in Hawaii, it's not about how much you know or how much education you have or even how qualified you are. It's about who you know. And the overall rule in Hawaii is it's about who you know and it's about what you know. But in Hawaii, when I was a public school teacher, at least a third maybe or a quarter of the teachers there had never graduated from college, and maybe a fifth of them had never been to college. and they still got the job. Kurt, stay over there for a second. And they still got the job despite the fact that they were not qualified for the job. And you see that in Hawaii, people, playing favorites, nepotism. So nepotism, it's listed here as the act of granting advantage, privilege, or position to relatives, close friends in an occupation or field. These fields may include, but are not limited to, business, politics, academia, entertainment, sports, religion, and other activities. The term originated with the assignment of nephews to important positions by popes and bishops. Also, I remember there was nepotism goes back to several philosophers, including Aristotle and Confucius, both condemning it as evil and unwise. The English expression "Bob's your uncle" has something to do with nepotism. There was a king or a prince, and he was received so much favoritism that they're like, "Oh, Bob's your uncle." So when you're done with something in England, it's like Bob's your uncle. So you see it in politics a lot, and employment when you're being favored for jobs. Entertainment. One famous example of nepotism is Tori Spelling. Uh, Her breakout role on Beverly Hills 90210, produced by a company owned by her father, Aaron Spelling. People joke about how she wasn't the best actress. Also, the Hollywood's Coppola family, including Sofia Coppola, Nicolas Cage, and Jason Schwartzman, all were aided by director Francis Ford Coppola. Nicolas Cage actually changed his last name just to distance himself from such charges of nepotism. But it is very common. And there's a story that Nicolas Cage got Johnny Depp into acting his first movie, Nightmare on Elm Street. Johnny Depp, and they were on the back of a bus, and Nicolas Cage is like, "I'm going to introduce you to my agent." And speaking of nepotism and Johnny Depp, there's a famous his famous daughter is also an example of nepotism. Lily Rose Depp, also Maya Hawke, Ethan Hawke's daughter, Dakota Johnson, famous actress, Zoe Kravitz, Jack Quaid, and Hollywood is lit throughout with nepotism. But as far as LeBron James and Bronny James, another example in the NBA, we have current MVP candidate Giannis Antetokounmpo. His teammate is his brother, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And many people will say that Giannis does not deserve a roster spot on the Milwaukee Bucks, one of the best teams in the NBA. He only plays in the garbage time, and he's definitely not as good as his MVP brother. So there's already an example of nepotism in the NBA. So I don't see any problem with LeBron James being drafted uh, to LeBron James' son, Bronny James, being drafted to a team, and LeBron James going to that team. It'll be the first times in the NBA that a father-son duo will be playing with each other. It happened once in baseball with Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr., but not in the NBA. And it probably won't happen again. If you look, no other player like LeBron James, the oldest player in the NBA, 39 years old, still playing incredible. He's going to be starting in the All-Star game next month, and no other person has ever even come close. There have been people that have played at 39 and 40 years old, but they average 2, 3 points a game, 2 rebounds, 10 minutes. LeBron James is playing the same minutes that anybody at 25 or 30 was. A great example is how LeBron James schooled Zion Williamson in Las Vegas. That was something amazing to see. Zion Williamson, 20 something years old, being outplayed, out hustled by 39-year-old LeBron James. Give the guy credit where credit is due. I've grown up in an era of hating LeBron, but give him credit where credit is due. And one thing, you don't want to ignore greatness. You don't want to hate greatness. And I put my cap on that. I'm not a hater. If somebody's good at something, I give them their credit. LeBron James is a great father. I saw a picture recently, yesterday, of him receiving an MVP award, a season MVP award. And it was a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And he had Bronny James on one side and Bryce James on the other side. And they were both dressed in nice suits, and looking very dignified, just like their father. Give credit where credit is due. LeBron James is a good father. You could say, oh, well, he's just living vicariously through his sons. That's the only time you really use that word, vicariously. Maybe if you're watching an IRL streamer, those people that watch the streamers all day, they try to live vicariously through the streamers. But some parents do live vicariously through their sons. However, LeBron James wants the best for his sons, and you got to admit he's a good father and he cares about his sons and his son's success. So that's not something to hate on. The other day, LeBron James was watching his son, Bronny James, play USC at Arizona, and it was right after the Lakers game. So LeBron was in the shower room, like changing and everything, but he was still watching the game. And the Lakers reporters, were asking LeBron's questions, and then he was answering the questions, but at the same time, he's watching the game, cheering on his son. He's like, "All right, there you go, there you go. Hold on, one second, one second. Okay, 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 yeah, 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 yeah." And I really like that, and that was a really good sight to see. LeBron James has really matured over time, and give him credit. And so I'm cheering for not for LeBron James. I've never cheered for LeBron James except in 2017, but I'm cheering for his son, Bronny James. And I remember a few days ago, you'd look on YouTube and there were a bunch of videos that said Bronny James overrated, Bronny James this and that. And now the videos are Bronny James highlights, Bronny James, scores so and so versus Arizona. And Kevin Durant went and saw Bronny James's game. Kevin Durant plays for the Phoenix Suns, and he went and checked out the Arizona USC basketball game. So it's become pretty interesting, and it's beyond basketball. The reason I love basketball and the reason anybody should love NBA basketball is because there's a lot more storylines, besides the actual game. It's not really always about the game. It's the game that it's centered around, but it's about life and everything else. And this is a great example of it. Everybody knows Bronny James isn't the best player in college basketball, and he may not even be deserving of being drafted by the NBA. But if you love basketball, and I think if you're a good person, then you want to cheer for him and you want him to do well. And there's no reason otherwise. He's a very likable person. Like I said, if I see somebody that has good qualities, you don't want to hate them for their good qualities. Bronny James is very well spoken. He's very good looking. He's very nice. He's a likable dude. So there's no reason to dislike him. I hope him and his younger brother are successful. And nepotism is thing, and it does give people advantages. Somebody like me who had a horrible father and my mother had schizophrenia, I didn't receive advantages, but I did receive the advantages of their genes, and both of them were highly educated, and I turned out as well highly educated. You see nepotism throughout the music world. Bob Dylan's son, Jacob Dylan, was lead singer of the Wallflowers. Uh, I'm sure they got a little open doors open for them because of who their father was. I remember Bob Dylan's grandson was trying to come out with a rap album. I don't know how that went. I haven't heard much about him. George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush, and everything in Hollywood as well. So if you can't beat them, join them. Like you shouldn't hate LeBron James for helping his son out. Like, oh, I went through it hard, so he should have it hard too. If I don't have any children, but if I did, I would be like LeBron James and try to give them every advantage, because LeBron James didn't have a father, and he doesn't have a relationship with his father. So uh, he's doing the opposite. He's right there for his kids, and he has a great relationship with his kids. And that you see that a lot with the right people. With the right people, they break the generational curse of previous bad parenting. So if I had kids, I'd do the same thing. I'd try to get them into basketball or podcasting, or one thing I definitely get them into is feeding street cats. Maybe not at 4 a.m. in the ghetto like I do, but also helping animals and being a good person in general. Thank you guys for listening. Mr. G Podcast available wherever you listen to it. Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. You might have to search a little bit. Mr. G Hawaii Podcast or Gregory Brandt Podcast. If you want to watch the video in their entirety, twitter.com/Gregory Brandt and youtube.com/Gregory Brandt. Thank you guys all. And for me and my street kitties, say aloha.